There are three major types of perspective that relate to the number of primary vanishing points in your scene. This video is all about the first type, one-point perspective. Just as there are three dimensions in space, the vertical, the horizontal, and depth, there can be three vanishing points to create orthogonals for each visible side of the object. Now, this isn't to say that one-point perspective creates one-dimensional images. All perspective is three-dimensional. However, without a vanishing point to recede to, that particular dimension remains parallel. Since one-point perspective has only one vanishing point, two of the three dimensions in your scene will remain straight and parallel to each other. The third dimension will recede to the vanishing point to create a sense of 3D depth and distance. In one-point perspective, the primary vanishing point should always exist somewhere on your scene's horizon line. Due to the nature of one-point perspective, the vanishing point should be somewhere within the confines of your picture plane. Since one-point perspective only deals with the reception of depth in your scene with parallel, vertical, and horizontal lines, the farther your vanishing point gets from the center of your picture plane, the more distorted the perspective will appear from reality. This distortion is rectified by the introduction of more vanishing points, which will be explained in the next couple of videos. For now, the best results will come from keeping the vanishing point within your picture plane. As stated in a previous video, the horizon line of your scene is important to consider as it determines much about the look and feel of your final image. Its position can help make or break different senses of scale and importance of details in your scene. A low horizon line implies a point of view that is looking up or is placed close to the ground. For example, a point of view that is close to the ground better illustrates scale of distant objects, such as tall buildings or mountains. A high horizon line shows mostly ground, and is implying looking down or having some amount of height for a better vantage point over the scene you're illustrating. For example, looking down at the street from the window of a tall building. The horizon line placed more toward the center of the picture plane implies a more normal forward-looking point of view, and often works best at around standard eye height from the ground to establish a relatable sense of place in your scene. Something that may take some time to wrap your head around is learning how to draw details in depth as they recede back toward the vanishing point. Foreshortening is the phenomena of longer horizontal objects appearing shorter and compressed as we view them from a more front-on perspective. The human arm is commonly used as an example for foreshortening. Viewed from the side, we clearly see the arm's length and curves. However, when viewed from straight on, the arm appears shorter, since those curves have begun overlapping in perspective. The same happens with all objects, from tree branches to cars to buildings. It's important to understand how foreshortening works in the scene you're constructing. For example, it's easy to overestimate how far back a building will recede into the distance, and it will end up looking too long and distorted as a result. There's no easy way to figure out the foreshortening of a scene, but know that the effect becomes more pronounced the farther back into the distance you draw. If you're standing right next to a long building, it will appear very elongated, as it should since you're standing right next to it. However, if you place that same building a mile down the road in front of you, all of its length will no longer be apparent. It will appear very flat. If you have a row of squares, all the same size, placed the same distance apart, all lined up to recede to the vanishing point, you'll find that their length becomes progressively narrower the farther away you get. Use this to your advantage in drawing scenery, especially buildings. Far away ones can be drawn much simpler and flatter than ones closer up, saving you time and effort. One-point perspective is the easiest form of perspective to draw, but that doesn't mean it's only used by beginners. It's a stylistic and compositional tool that can be extremely effective when combined with the right scene. Even professional artists commonly draw in one-point perspective if it lends to a particular look they were going for. One-point perspective is very clean and orderly. Since all depth recedes back to one point, it can create a strong center of focus within your image. It's very common in one-point perspective artworks to find the center of focus located at somewhere around the vanishing point. If not, the scene will commonly be much shallower in depth by either having another object block the vanishing point, or use fog or lighting effects to shift your focus away to somewhere else in the image. Well, that about wraps up our video for 1-point perspective. Move on to the next video to learn all about what happens when we add a second vanishing point to the mix. As usual, there's a full written transcript of everything I've said in this video down below in the additional resources section.